All right, hello there, thrill seekers. First up, before I start, I want to make two announcements. One is that Shozan Jack Taubner has put up a response to my previous two videos, which were called, let me get this right, Free Samples from God and Can Only Monks Become Enlightened? He put up his response to that. I think it's called Is This Dork Enlightened? And I will put a link below to that video because I think if you watch my last two videos, this video by Shozan Jack Taubner is like the completion of that if you want to really get more into that subject. The other announcement is that I will be in Minnesota, technically 8 Zen, Minnesota is the name of the city. It's not really a city, I think it's a gas station. And somewhere in the outskirts of that gas station / city is a Zen, monastery called Hokyoji. And I will be there from February 12th through 18th talking about Dainin Katagiri. And I will also leave a link below to that so you can go check that out and sign up and be there. All right. So what do I want to talk about today? What I want to talk about today is free giving and what's the other word? God, I always forget these things. Helpful conduct. Okay. Free giving and helpful conduct. It comes from this chapter of Shobogenzo. It's Shobogenzo Book 3 if you're looking at the Nishijima and Cross translation. Bodhisatta Shi Shobo. I don't know, well, I can actually tell you because I did write it down where you can find these in other versions. It's in volume 1 of the Kazuhagi Tanahashi version. It's in Hubert Neerman's translation from Shasta Abbey. And I talked about it in my books, It Came From Beyond Zen and Sit Down and Shut Up. So 2 of my books I talked about this, and I realized I'd never made a video about it because somebody, my friend Angelika in Germany, had asked me about this and if I'd put a video up about it, but I guess I haven't. I wrote an essay on my blog in 2019, which I actually think, so this is also, I believe, in my book, what's the new one called? The Other Side of Nothing. The Other Side of Nothing. I adapted the blog posts for this from that thing. So the title that Nishijima Roshi and Mike Cross gave it is 4 Elements of a Bodhisattva's Social Relations, and I'll just give you the TLDR. They are, the first is free giving, the second is kind speech, the third is helpful conduct, and the fourth is cooperation. So I want to talk mostly about free giving and helpful conduct. So free giving is fusei, which is the, well, you probably can't see that, can you? Anyway, somewhere up there. Fusei. Fusei is the Japanese way of saying the Sanskrit word dana. And if you've ever been to a yoga class or a lot of Zen things they do these days, you've probably heard the word dana, and it's usually used as a synonym or euphemism maybe for donation. They'll come to you at the end and say, you can give dana to the teacher. It just means free giving. And the helpful conduct is rigyo. Can you see that? Oh, let me make it straighter. Rigyo. Rigyo is how you pronounce that in Japanese. Helpful conduct, beneficial conduct, from the Sanskrit arta charya, useful conduct. So Dogen says about free giving means not being greedy. Not being greedy means not coveting. Not coveting means, in everyday language, not courting favor. And he's just basically explaining these Chinese terms in Japanese, and that's what it comes out when you translate that to English. Even if we rule the 4 continents, if we want to bestow the teaching of right truth, we must simply not be greedy. That might mean, for example, donating treasures that are to be thrown away to people who we do not know. When we offer flowers from distant mountains to the Tathagata, that's the Buddha, and when we donate treasures accumulated in our past life to living beings, whether the gift is dharma or material objects, in each case, we are originally endowed with the virtue that accompanies free giving. And he goes on and on and on like that, but my favorite line in this whole thing is this: earning a living and doing productive work are originally nothing other than free giving. So that's the line I want to talk about first, and I don't know, maybe I won't even get past that line. The Chinese characters that are translated as earning a living and doing productive work are Jisei Sangyo. There they are, Jisei Sangyo. I'm taking this from my blog from 2019, so you can go look at that too. Maybe I can find the link and give it to you. So Jisei Sangyo, or sometimes Chisei Sangyo, means, well, Tanahashi translates it as making a living and producing things, and that's kind of basically what it means. But this phrase meant a lot to me when I was working for Tsuburaya Productions. So, little background here. Tsuburaya Productions is a company in Japan, and regular viewers know this, but new viewers might not, that made a show, or makes a show, called Ultraman. And Ultraman is a giant superhero character, and it's the biggest superhero in Asia, and so very successful company, but also a very small company, because they just got this one thing. So even though the one thing was really successful, none of their other stuff was very successful, unfortunately. So I loved Ultraman when I was a kid, and when I moved to Japan, originally I thought I might be living there at the most 3 years, because I signed a contract with the Japanese, what's it called, Ministry of Education, and it was a year-to-year contract, renewable 3 times to teach English in Japanese schools. Okay. So, thinking that, I went crazy my first year collecting Ultraman junk, books and videos and merchandise and all this stuff. And then I got the crazy idea to write to the company and see if I could get a job working at Tsuburaya Productions, to the people who made Ultraman. And to my amazement, I got a job interview, and to my further amazement, I got the job. And that's where I worked for the next 15 or so years. So, before that, I had worked in what was then called, this is the early 90s, was then called the Summit County Board of Mental Retardation and Developmental Disabilities. And I understand they've changed the name of that, but I don't know what it's called. And it was an institution, I don't know what you call it, not a company, but it was a thingy, whatever it is, in Akron, Ohio, that served to, the ostensible idea of the place was to train mentally handicapped adults to get jobs in, whatever we could get them jobs for. What actually happened with most of the people we worked with was that they never got jobs in the outside, but sometimes they would do piecework that was sent to us from factories and things that they could assemble in the sheltered workshop, is what they called it. A sheltered workshop being, yeah. Sometimes people in that population don't want to be around so-called normal people, because normal people make fun of them and don't understand them, and et cetera, et cetera. So they have these sheltered workshop environments. So anyway, the pay was lousy, the work was hard, and I remember a few memorable times where I had to take a person a foot taller than me and big man into the bathroom and help him go number 2 and then wipe his bum, because he didn't know how to wipe his bum. That would be kind of a fairly typical day for me, and I was getting nothing for this. I mean, I was getting paid, but the pay was barely enough. I lived at the time, I think I lived 2 places. I lived in the punk rock house with my friend, who I ended up calling Marky Moon, although that wasn't really his name, in the Letters to a Dead Friend About Zen. And then I lived in the house with him, which we shared, which was a terrible house. And then I moved into Tim McCarthy's house, who was my first Zen teacher. He had a house with a few rooms he could rent out. So in both cases, what I could afford was a single room in a group house. Basically, a lot of the people we worked with, I didn't just thought of this, were living in similar situations. A lot of the mentally handicapped people we worked with were living in exactly the same situations where they'd have one room in a group home. That's what I had. That's all I could afford. Then I moved to Japan, did English teaching for a year, and then got this job for Tsuburaya Productions. And Tsuburaya Productions paid me pretty well. And I felt terrible about this because I had given up what was a noble job and definitely free giving and charitable work, and it was wonderful. And then I got a job working for the people that made Ultraman, which I loved and which I had a lot of fun at. But I felt guilty because I felt like, well, I'm not doing anything now. I'm just doing this. I'm working for a company that's producing mindless entertainment for kids. When I should be doing something wonderful as a Buddhist. And then I came across this line from Dogen that I'm going to read it again. Earning a living and doing productive work are originally nothing other than free giving. Now, in my essay that I put up back in 2019, I quoted Roshi Joan Halifax of Upaya Zen Center, who sent out a tweet that said, it was a line from one of her books. She tweets out lines from her own books. I tried that and I felt like a dweeb. So I only did it like 3 times. Anyway, it goes, this gift of life that I call wise hope is rooted in our vows and is what Master Dogen means when he admonishes us to give life to life, even if it is one dying person at a time, one refugee at a time, one prisoner at a time, one life at a time, one ecosystem at a time. So what Joan Halifax is doing here is equating this idea with the idea of similar idea to Christian charity, and which is what a lot of the so-called engaged Buddhism movement does. So you do great things, and that's how you help the refugees and the dying people and the mentally handicapped adults who can't get jobs, and you do these wonderful things, and that's free giving. That's what we should do. Now, Dogen is interesting because I don't think Dogen would ever deny that that's a good thing to do. Those are nice things to do. There's nothing wrong with doing charitable acts and volunteering and feeding the homeless and doing all this great stuff. That's great to do. But he also says that earning a living and doing a regular old job is an example of free giving. Now, I said this and I thought I had explained it, but somebody complained that I hadn't. So I did a second blog piece on this in which I explained this. Dogen says that working for a living is originally free giving. So originally is the word. In Japanese, the phrase that Dogen uses is moto yori. So moto means the basis of something, and yori is from. So from the basis, from the ground up, that this doing a job and working for a living is free giving. So why would I say something like that? I hate people asking rhetorical questions. Do you hate people asking rhetorical questions and answering them? Yes, I do. But I'm doing it anyway. Why is making a living free giving? Well, if you think about it, in the past, before there was such a thing as money, this is how it was done. People worked cooperatively. So one guy chopped the wood and, one person cooked the food. In order to cook the food, you need the wood to be chopped. But in order to cook the food, you got to spend all day cooking the food, so you can't be chopping the wood. So somebody would chop the wood and somebody would cook the food, and then the person who chopped the wood would get to eat some of the food that the person who cooked the food cooked. And this is just two people in the society. So there's a whole society of people just doing this stuff cooperatively and everything worked. But somehow along the lines, we got economies with money and exchanges like that. And there's a whole, you can get into history and read about how that worked. But what Dogen is saying is that what has become in his time, which is 800 years ago, working for a wage, was originally an example of free giving. And that was a great thing to hear, because I realized this started a whole train of thought about my work with Ultraman and stuff. That back when I was a kid, Ultraman was my favorite TV show. And this meant something to me. For one thing, it was something that I could that I just enjoyed, which is nice. There's I think Robert Fripp said this, but I wish I could find the quote. But there is great value to what we call mere entertainment, because mere entertainment can mean a lot to somebody. And in the case of Ultraman, mere entertainment meant a lot to me. It was my introduction, for example, to other cultures, because the heroes of this show were all Japanese, and they didn't look like me or sound like me or anything, but I related to them, and I didn't consciously think of this, but somehow it gave me an entry into that world of respecting and actually admiring another culture and learning from it. Also, it planted the seeds of Buddhism, which I've talked about in this channel before. There's a famous episode of Ultraman, where they have a Buddhist funeral for all the monsters. So Ultraman is 120 feet tall, aka 40 meters tall, and he fights monsters. And he basically kills the monsters. And then in one episode, he feels guilty about killing the monsters, and then they have a Buddhist funeral. So I saw my first examples of Buddhism in Ultraman. And I didn't know it was Buddhism at the time. I didn't know what it was, but somehow it stuck in there. So this was meaningful. So I realized you don't really know what your work is going to do for somebody. So it's good to do your work as free giving, even if you don't think of it that way. You think about, I'm doing this mindless grunt work just to make the money to do whatever. Instead of thinking of it that way, think of it as you're giving to society in order to maybe reap the benefits of living in a society. That's what's meant there. The other one was helpful conduct, rigyo. Dogen says this means using skillful means to benefit living beings, high or low. For example, by looking into the distant and near future and employing expedient methods to benefit them. Now, I don't like this word skillful. It really annoys me, because Buddhists are always using skillful, and I've even heard it used as a way of berating somebody. I don't remember where I heard this, but it's been probably several times I've heard this, with Buddhists going, well, that's not skillful. And it comes from the word upaya, which means skillful means, and doing the things that benefit others. So the examples Dogen gives are people have taken pity on stricken turtles and taken care of sick sparrows. And these are references to old Chinese fables about how people, for example, let's see, a man called Koyu saved a turtle in distress, and as a result of this good act, he later became the governor of a district in the state. And a 9-year-old boy called Yoho took care of an injured bird, and as a result of this act, his descendants ascended to 3 top positions in the Chinese government. So whether you believe that kind of stuff or not isn't important, but it's the idea of doing little things to help out is useful. The example I gave in one of my books was helping your mother clean the dead squirrel out of the gutter. It's the weirdest example I could think of. But a lot of people think of free giving and helpful conduct as the way Joan Halifax puts it, as doing this wonderful thing for these poor people in distress, and and people get so caught up in this. I think it's a lot of the this garbage you get online where people are trying to outdo each other for how wonderful they are. Look at this thing I've done, and look at this thing I've done, and you haven't done this thing, and I've helped these people. And certain people become the darlings for a while. It's like everybody's got to help the trans people now, and everybody's got to help the POCs now, and everybody's got to help the Ukrainian refugees. Oh, wait a minute. No, we're not worried about the Ukrainian refugees. We're worried about the Palestinian refugees. So forget those Ukrainian refugees. And it becomes like a trend like that. And that's just because it's the thing that gets you the most points. You don't want to be like that. Charitable acts and free giving are anything that you do for somebody else, and don't worry about the rewards, don't worry about the merit, don't worry whether it's the best thing you can do or a little thing. Just do the act in the spirit of free giving, and whatever it is, it's important and it matters. So there you go. I've gone on longer than I intended to with this one, so I'm going to stop here, and I hope that was useful. I hope that was skillful for you. Anyway, if you want to do some free giving to me, look at that transition, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. That is the free giving that helps me make a living, but you don't got to give to me if you don't want to. We will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. The reason you don't have to give to me if you don't want to is because I'm giving this for free. See how that works? All right, we'll see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey, Ziggy. I'm freely giving you this couch that you can live and sleep on. Isn't that nice of me? All right, maybe I should freely let you continue sleeping. All right, we'll talk to you later, Ziggy. Bye.